I salute you, Michigan, for being on the front lines of this struggle, for having the courage and the determination to take a leading role in this fight for justice. Thank you. I know you've had a tough time here in Michigan. Like many other places, the voters of Michigan passed a law, fully expecting it would be implemented, fully expecting that our elected officials and our law enforcement officers would respect the will of the voters.
But they were liars!
Sadly, you've learned in Michigan what we learned in California, that passing the law is only the first step. We've learned that all too often our own elected officials will attempt to block the medical cannabis laws that the voters have passed. We've learned that all too often our law enforcement agencies will refuse to implement that law or implement it in ways that are contrary to the intent of the voters. We've learned that the greater struggle comes when we must hold our elected officials accountable, when we must demand that they respect the results of elections just like we're required to.
November 8, 2008, patients, the general public thought that the war was over. Unfortunately, the government did not. They just viewed it as a setback.
Why is there this problem? And I think the short answer is a lot of us naively voted in favor of the Medical Marijuana Act without thinking about how it could be applied.
We're in a national fight. This is a national war, this war on marijuana.
You have police officers still making arrests. You've got people proposing to have the Medical Marijuana Act amended to make it more amenable to law enforcement. Local municipalities passing laws limiting what people can do in their own homes. The Attorney General proposing that patients sacrifice their Fourth Amendment rights. If that doesn't sound like a declaration of war upon patients and caregivers and people who are using medical marijuana, then I don't know what is.
So they're not carrying out the true intent of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. They continue to attack patients, they seek them out, and when they bust caregivers, they go after their patients as well.
Good Americans vote, take advantage of your government, don't let them take advantage of you.
You have a group of people at the state of Michigan trying to come up with some kind of policies, and they don't know how to do it. And so they didn't create policies. They didn't give guidance on what a patient-physician relationship was. They didn't consider that somebody would have to develop a specialty. They didn't consider how somebody might be prescribed medical marijuana for MS, somebody else might be prescribed medical marijuana for migraines, somebody might be prescribed medical marijuana for arthritis. And each of those different illnesses might require a different approach.
We take happy pills like they're candy, handfuls a day. We think nothing of it to make us feel better. And yet when people use marijuana to feel better, suddenly they're a drug addict and they are a felon.
Some of us are trying to fix that one way or another, whether it's the people in Lansing creating the bills that maybe you're not fond of, or the people doing the petition drives, the people trying to legalize marijuana use, just period, and get rid of this dichotomy between you can legally have some and you can't. It's confused everybody. And so even the most liberal, most well-meaning person who's trying to create good law is lost.
Here's the biggest challenge I do every single day, and that's get down the step.
Alone, without me.
I'm Jim Hamblin. I'm 58 years old. I was diagnosed with MS 12 years ago. It's just a disease of the nerve endings. And I knew I had it a long time ago. I got optic neuritis about 20 years ago. And my sister and brother also had MS at the time. And I knew if we get optic neuritis, that means MS is the next to come. So I went and got diagnosed, and they goes, "You've got MS," and I goes, "No kidding, Sherlock." You know, I knew I had it. But we used to walk every night. We walked several miles a night. And then it got to be where I had to rest while we were walking. And then I had to rest more while we were walking. And then we stopped walking because I just couldn't do it anymore.
Been married for 11 years. It'll be 12 this year. Got married in 2000.
She's a huge factor in me getting by. Jen is a great caregiver.
There he is, right there. Yep, that's Hathaway. Jim was playing the drums and I fell in love.
I play drums. I've been in a band, the Urban Nomads, for probably 8-9 years, and I was always the main drummer in the band, the drummer in the band. And then I got so I couldn't do it all night. I just couldn't play all night. So I would play 4 or 5 tunes, then I would switch to my hand drums. But I still have a lot of fun playing the hand drums, and I still do it. Can't knock me down. You know, so I've got what's called secondary progressive MS. Progressive MS, it just gets worse and worse, and it just very, very slow downhill. And it has been slow downhill forever.
With MS, what it is it's the conduction of your nerves. Plaques form on your brain and it interrupts the conduction of your nerves. So if you think of it like an electrical cord and the electricity going through and it can't make it all the way through, and that's kind of what it does to your nerves. So they misfire, and when they misfire, it causes like a nerve tingling that goes through your whole entire body, and people describe it as like bugs crawling under their skin or electricity under their skin, and the marijuana is the one thing that has always taken that away for him.
My name is Matthew Abel. I'm an attorney and founder of this law firm, Cannabis Counsel, PLC. I've been practicing law in Michigan for 25 years. Currently, I am the campaign director of the Committee for a Safer Michigan, which is the proponent of a ballot question initiative. This is at 2930 East Jefferson, and this is the campaign office of the Committee for Safer Michigan, the RepealToday.org ballot question committee that is attempting to put on a constitutional amendment, put a constitutional amendment on the ballot to repeal marijuana prohibition in Michigan here in 2012. This is home base for the campaign. It's not much yet, but at least it's, you know, at least there's a place where people can come and work and volunteer and organize. Gotta start somewhere. So
we need your support. And what this is we need 323,000 ballot signatures by the 9th of July in order to put this on the ballot in Michigan.
we have had about 25 boxes of petitions that go out. We still have about 1.5 boxes yet, and we'll probably print more. We've distributed a lot of them throughout the state, and we're excited to see them start coming back. We're hoping that we can get this on the ballot by the 9th of July, and then we'll have a campaign to win this election.
Look, a lot of people know marijuana from their college days, when frankly you smoked it, and sometimes you ate it in brownies. But you never did anything else because that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was not to get healthy, it was to get stoned. And so a lot of people, knowing that it made some people healthy, voted in favor of medical marijuana, but they weren't really thinking about what are the complexities here.
There's a lot of insanity going on in the interpretation of the Medical Marijuana Act. It is pretty pure, it makes sense, it covers a lot of people, it would protect a lot of people. Only after being beaten, tortured, whipped, contorted, is it bending and breaking.
The law, I've always argued that it's clear. It states that no patient shall be subject to arrest, comma, prosecution, comma, or penalty in any manner, or denied any right. Instead, they're saying that this is somehow vague, and they continue to arrest these patients and continue to prosecute these patients, to penalize them in many manners, and to deny them of all their rights.
So what they've done, and what our Attorney General and what the legislators have done, and what law enforcement has done since we passed our drug policy reform in Michigan, is they keep redefining the law. Well, you know, what's an enclosed locked facility? Nobody knows. So we're going to prosecute you and let the Supreme Court figure it out.
The courts at every turn, and the prosecutors and law enforcement especially, in starting all these raids and everything, are just disregarding the intent of the act. They're proceeding as though the act never happened, and then they make up excuses one way or the other to try to avoid the act any way they can.
It was supposed to be broad. It was supposed to cover more people than it wasn't. It was supposed to be more inclusive than it was exclusive. That's how I read it. Take, for example, the other issue about edibles. Here, with a marijuana brownie, according to the government, there is no brownie. You could take one little fleck of marijuana, the most microscopic amount, an amount you couldn't even see, and if you touched it, it would probably disintegrate. And if you put that into a huge brownie, like one that would be on Man vs. Food, and they test it, then you have in your possession Man vs. Food weight of marijuana. It is preposterous.
The problem is the law does exist,
Warrant's bad.
but it's been completely disrespected, and the rights and protections that we were supposed to get just have not been realized, and that's been because of some of these people that are in opposition to what we're doing, not out of a lack of understanding, but just in opposition to what we're doing and doing what they can to hurt this law.
If you wanted to voice your opinion about whether you would think that medical marijuana was bogus or not, then on November 8th of 2008, you had your chance. And if you went to the polls and you voted no, then you lost, along with, 36% of the population. That's how democracy works. I'm sorry, but you're holding a ticket to a train that has already left the station.
When there is a law that was poorly crafted, has caused lots of problems in communities. So my job is to interpret the law.
Enforce the laws of the state of Michigan, had as much respect for them as we voters do, we wouldn't be looking in this situation that we are today. Because in 2008, over 3 million Michigan voters made their feelings about cannabis very clear, which twice as many of them voted for it as they did for the man who's been most responsible for blocking implementation of that law.
It's hard to put into words what I think about the job that Attorney General Bill Schuette is doing.
Attorney General is taking the most restrictive view of this possible. He's making it so it's unduly difficult on caregivers.
Some of the bills that he has put forward are simply incredible. His proposal that any patient or caregiver, by agreeing to become a patient or caregiver, you automatically waive your right to have your home secure from government inspection. So if you choose to be a medical marijuana patient or caregiver, you gotta let the government come into your home and look around, because they gotta be able to check on whether you're doing it right. The idea that a person who wants to be a medical marijuana patient or caregiver somehow should, by doing so, waive his or her constitutional right to have their home free from a search is just one of the most insulting things that I've seen.
And as the Attorney General of this state, he is sworn to uphold the laws of this state. The Michigan Medical Marijuana Act is a law of this state, and his duty is to uphold it, and he's doing the exact opposite. He's doing everything in his power, it seems, to undercut it.
would hate to see that we're driving medical marijuana back into the shadows. You can't help the fact that somebody who gets caught using marijuana has to prove that they are legally allowed to use or possess marijuana. But if you can't acquire it in the first place, it makes it really, really difficult for patients. And to be able to acquire the strain that works for you, to be able to acquire the mechanism that works for you, takes specialists, frankly. One specialist is going to grow one kind of marijuana, they're not going to grow 20 different kinds of marijuana, or even 5. It's hard for me to imagine how caregivers do what they do, but for a caregiver to get sophisticated enough to create a tincture means they don't have time to be sophisticated growing some broad spectrum of medical marijuana that can meet the needs of you and you. It's just a problem. So if we don't allow dispensaries, then we've cut patients off.
The system was set up such that a patient could either grow their own medicine or have a caregiver. A caregiver is limited to 5 patients, and while that system on paper might work, in reality there are all types of distribution problems or access problems with patients whose caregivers are not producing either enough or what they need, or not providing it to them, or who for whatever reason don't have the medicine available that the patient needs. And so for reasons of access, of quantity, of variety, and knowledgeability, dispensaries would be a good thing.
An individual caregiver, can only grow so many strains and make so many products. That education has to extend past what that one caregiver can do for a couple of people. We need to kind of do this collectively. And so when a culmination of the various things that are being produced by caregivers can be brought into one place, and people can have easy access to trying these different things and learning about them, then we can figure out what works for people sooner and get it to them better. And they can direct their caregivers then to create the thing that works for them.
Came in for a brownie today.
Oh, did you? Cool.
Yeah.
You can grab it, man, because he's making more today, but that's the last one.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna take this last brownie, and then I think more of an indica though. I really don't want to.
It has I know it's a sativa, but it has an indica effect. It's that strong. But there needs to be a central location where the medicine that isn't immediately needed for patients can go and be provided for the patients who are still achieving their own gardens or working with caregivers. Even the best garden in the world is susceptible to some type of an issue. And if a mite infestation or a power problem or something like that takes place and it compromises a harvest, those people waiting for that medicine need an alternative at that point.
Well, a dispensary in its simplest terms would be a place where anyone with a medical marijuana card may purchase medicine, whether it's smokable buds or flowers, or a tincture, which would be a liquid either in an alcohol base or in a glycerin base, something in an eyedropper, or an edible, any kind of a food product, or butter where they can make their own food. Many people don't have the capability to make any of those products or to grow medical grade cannabis for that matter. And so a dispensary is a marijuana store.
And through the studies that we're doing, we're actually getting to the point where we can customize some medicine for people for their particular conditions based on the feedback of what we know is working for them.
For example, there are marijuana strains out there which the dispensaries claim are particularly effective for pain management. There are marijuana strains out there that are particularly effective for uplifting and relieving post-traumatic stress syndrome or depression.
It's somewhat infuriating that why the hell does the government care where a patient gets their medicine? And the prosecutors will say, because it's illegal.
A law that's built on compassion can't be viewed in a Machiavellian way. You have to view it with the spirit in which it was intended.
I have a client who was running a collective in a rural town in Michigan, and was busted by someone who came in with a card who was apparently a legitimate patient, but not their patient. So the police gave this person marked money, sent them in, had them make a buy, then executed a search warrant, got the marked money out of the till, and are charging this person with delivery of marijuana, where they were providing marijuana to someone who had a valid medical marijuana card. What is the point of such prosecution? It's time to change the law.
Since when do we as Americans need a law to tell us that we can't group together or we can't open a business and attempt to I mean, this whole country was founded on the idea of capitalism and business. So then I hear people say, well, they're making a profit. Like, this is America. I mean, the whole friggin' country was based on making a profit. I mean, that's what people do, is they make a profit. And you don't need a law to say that you can or can't profit.
Indoor Garden Superstore. Hi, I'm Fred Schaller.
I'm Jeff Cox.
And we're the owners of the Indoor Garden Superstore. We're also known as the Grow Wizards.
Well, we've been in business for what, about 2.5 years?
Yeah, almost 3 years now.
Almost 3 years now. We decided we'd get into the business and help people learn how to garden indoors.
When the law changed over, that definitely was a green light for us to go ahead and open a legitimate business selling indoor gardening equipment to the new industry that was going to be needed.
Hydroponic gardening is basically, in my description, is kind of force-feeding oxygen along with the nutrients. Where a soil gardener isn't getting oxygen as repetitively as you do in a hydroponic environment.
The whole indoor gardening industry is not necessarily aimed at the medical marijuana community. People are doing it for all different reasons. There are hobbyists who just want to grow maybe some herbs and vegetables in their garden. There's maybe your patient who wants to grow his or her own medicine in their own home and not be bothered by the authorities in any way. Or you might have caregivers who actually have made a business out of supplying patients with a product that they can't grow themselves.
Newman, that's Fred's dog.
Newman is our mascot. Newman pretty much runs the show here at the Indoor Garden Superstore. He's the real Grow Wizard. We just pretty much work for him. I'd say 90% of our customers
85–90%
are growing medical marijuana. We know there are patients out there who are dealing with this illegally, and they have no reason to talk about it under their breath. We can talk openly about growing these plants, these certain type of plants, and not feel like we're breaking the law doing so.
Newman agrees with that.
He agrees. I don't think we've really received any negative attitudes from anybody, really. I mean, we conduct our business out in the open and we have nothing to hide. We're a garden store selling garden supplies. The Michigan medical marijuana law has had a great impact on the economy. Basically, if that law wasn't passed, we wouldn't have opened the store. There's a lot of small players behind the scenes that are all making a little bit here and there off of it. There's a number of nutrient companies, all the soil companies, all the companies that make water purifiers and anything that's used in this industry are all benefiting from this industry. Whether they're coming out and admitting that this is part of their demographic or not, it is. Like us, like we're a garden store. We just sell garden supplies. We don't sell marijuana seeds. We don't sell anything to do with the plant itself. We just help people grow their own medicine.
The plain fact is that none of us know very much about this drug in any verifiable way. Well, Bill, it's been about 2 hours since you got the drug. How do you feel?
Fantastic. Defiant? Not at all.
businesslike? Not at all. Sheesh. Friendly. Extreme. They sound ridiculous.
Would you be interested in taking part in a study like this again and having the same type of drug?
Sure.
You would. It's been a very pleasant experience for you.
I'll do it anytime you want.
Do you think it would be...
Any time at all.
Do you think
Just
it would be...
call me any time of the day or night. And we found out that the drug makes people happy, it makes them intoxicated, and finally makes them sleepy.
The National Institute of Drug Abuse is only looking for evidence of abuse of drugs.
First of all, the government doesn't want us to do research on marijuana, at least on the beneficial effects of marijuana, because marijuana is a Schedule I drug. It is considered by the government to have no medicinal value and a high propensity for abuse. Any study purporting to look at the medicinal or beneficial effects of marijuana is rejected out of hand. There's almost no research on it. There's a total of 14 studies on MS, which is a condition that people really claim miraculous changes from using marijuana. There's only 14 studies, and there's only one study using smoked marijuana. And that study found 97% of the people of MS patients who smoked marijuana found relief. 97%. You can't get 97% of people to agree on anything.
I believe that it helped my progressing my disease go a lot slower. And I have no any scientific anything to back it up, but that's what I believe. I know how I feel.
There's plenty of medical evidence of all kinds of miraculous things that marijuana does. If you laid it all out and you started telling people, they wouldn't believe it. They don't believe it, partly because the government has put out so much strong propaganda for so long, telling people that marijuana kills. It's interesting enough to find out that it's a relatively benign substance, and then to find out that it can be helpful in all sorts of ways it's quite a sea change of opinion for most people to accept that.
When people advertise medical marijuana, it's all big marijuana leaves. It's interesting titles that imply being stoned. That really carries over into people's perception of what is medical marijuana all about. It's not all about being healthy, it's about being high. Even if you know that's not the truth, even if you know that's not the goal, that's still the image that's in people's heads.
The question is, why are people afraid of marijuana?
Marijuana.
It's a really interesting question. It's almost preternatural in the opposition to marijuana. I think it has to do with what happens to be my field, which is sociology. And I think it has to do with the fear that if we allow these potheads to do whatever they want, then all we're going to do is sit around on the couch all day and zone out. And that's not what our society is all about. Our society is early to bed, early to rise, and work a 12-hour day. It's interesting that alcohol is legal when it's so much more harmful than marijuana by any measure. But alcohol is a more social drug, and it's something you do ideally after work. With marijuana, you could do it during work, and you could probably function quite well during work. And I think there's a concern that by legalizing it, we're going to justify it and encourage its use.
So here we are, we're in La La Land, where it's clear that it has medical use, but the government won't acknowledge it.
every day at about 9-10 o'clock at night, I used to get what's called the creepy crawlies. It's just the creepy crawlies, and it's almost impossible how to explain it. It's like you get an electric shock through you. It doesn't really hurt, but it just drives you nuts. It's got to go away. And the only thing that makes it go away, I can take a few hits off a joint, and it just goes away. It's just gone. Just like that. It's incredible. So, that's what I do. I don't smoke at all during the day. And that is almost my reward at the end of the day. You made it through the day. That's my reward. To make it through the day. I've tried Avonex, and it took me off all drugs recently because that's really for progressive relapse and remitting, and they basically decide there's nothing they can do for me anymore. The Avonex used to make me sick about once a week. I'd get it on Monday and I'd feel sick on Tuesday. Marijuana helps inflammation a lot, and that's why it makes me feel better, because I can do things better, I can do everything better. Like exercise every morning. I haven't exercised today, but I exercise every day and do push-ups and curls and stretching, so if you don't, you just curl up and die.
Oh, I think it's wonderful. It helps him a lot, especially in the last few years. It's really hard for him to just make it through a day, and he's an amazing man. He goes to work every day. He struggles to even get off the porch. He drives with hand controls now so that he can go to work every day.
The biggest part of my day is getting in my truck and getting back out of my truck at work and have to reverse. And it's tougher at the end of the day. There's the brake. There's go. Stopped doing it after I drove Janet's car into the fence across the street because I couldn't stop it in time to hit the fence. I couldn't even get my foot on the brake. That's when my leg just seized right up and I just couldn't even. The fence stopped the car, and so I can't drive anymore. And so that's when I got these controls, and works out really good.
He's an inspiration because he just keeps going. And so at the end of the day, it's kind of the way that he can relax and let loose. I mean, I don't think people realize how much of a struggle it is to just make it through a day when you have such a disease like that.
In medical marijuana cases, though, it has been a war. I mean, there's something bigger involved here. There's something grander. There is a group of people who have opposed medical marijuana from the start. They've come up with political slogans like "Save the Children." And it's the sort of thing that happens in a war, where you have a group of powerful people who are using all of their might to go after a group that believes something different and people that are doing something different. Those moments don't happen very often in the criminal justice system. They happen, but they don't happen that often, where you're part of, you can feel a cause, something bigger than just you and the individual case.
We all know people who love war. I mean, I'm from a military family. My father was law enforcement. We know people who are very patriotic and sort of hook into that us versus them mentality, war mentality.
But when enough people say that this is something that they want to help themselves. Patients say, I just want to be able to use marijuana in my own home and leave me alone. And the government says no, and then comes up with lots of propaganda as to why they shouldn't be able to, and they're getting away with it. That sounds like war to me. And so, who else is going to defend them? I mean, you know, I don't see the judiciary doing it. I don't see prosecutors doing it, and I don't see police officers doing it. So you have, you know, guys like me.
The drug war prevents parents from being able to parent according to their own values. And that's a real problem for me. It's a real problem that our rights are being violated in the way that they are. So I'm a war protester. That's what I consider myself. I'm one of the people that other mothers call when the guys with guns and masks come in their house and take your stuff and take your kids and, you know, clear the kitchen table with their arm and laugh at you. They just keep finding ways to take your shit and put you in jail and put you in prison and take your rights from you. They keep finding more and more ways. They're really good at it. Because in Michigan, our asset forfeiture laws, they're civil asset forfeiture laws. They allow law enforcement to take everything you own and never charge you with a crime. You know, they don't have to get a conviction. What they do is they say that the property was used to shield a crime or was used with proceeds from a crime. So you see these crazy cases like the city of Royal Oak versus a 1972 Mustang. They raid dispensaries and compassion clubs and take all the files. And they find the caregivers and the growers. And then they go figure out who's got the most money, who's got the nicest house, who's got the most stuff. And they go bust those people. They take their stuff. And then they say, well, you know, how much money have you got? You're gonna need about $5,000 to get your humidifier, your widescreen TV, all of your lights, your car. You're gonna have to put a deposit down and pay us for storage of your stuff. One of the many things that drug war has done is it's skewed police priorities. You know, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-public safety. I'm just saying that if you stop investigating state-sanctioned patients and caregivers and go get the rapists and murderers, we'll be safer. It's very simple to me. How can this be America? How can these things be happening to people? How can they have their rights trampled like this and have no options?
We thought the law was intended to be interpreted in a manner that was consistent with protecting patients. But unfortunately, the laws, the courts, have been taking an extremely strict view of the protections in the law, and anyone who's minimally outside those protections is getting in trouble.
I'm John Targowski. I'm an attorney. I represent Ann Wilbur, and today we had a continued preliminary examination. She's being prosecuted here in Crawford County.
People are trying to comply with the law. No, and they're not getting the protection of the Medical Marijuana Act. That's important. So I'm not talking about ignorance of the law. You know, do you know how rare it is to see people deliberately trying to govern their conduct according to a law? People don't do that on the road.
So the judge will decide on my immunity, will decide if I'm going to court, so it'll be either some Section 8 or some dismissal or Section 8 jury trial, basically. Room smelled pretty good though.
We did a full 2.5, 3 hours, and then the last time we were here was full 2.5, 3 hours, and we fought every issue, and that's unusual. What is also unusual is that my client was offered, most lawyers would consider my client was offered a fairly generous plea bargain, and she's adamant that she wants to be protected under the act and that she's a patient. So she's facing the potential for real jail time when she could have just had fines and costs on a misdemeanor, simple misdemeanor marijuana possession.
Judge, asked me if I thought I was guilty. So then I had to answer him honestly that I did not think I was guilty, and then my plea was not accepted by the judge. And I thank the Lord for that every day. I actually turned and thanked the judge because I was so happy. I felt alive again. I felt that I would be able to win the 4I defense and that I would be able to prove that the reason I'm over here is because I'm helping with making preparations for my patients. And they really appreciate it. So that's how it happened with the plea. I did take the plea and then they wouldn't accept it because I guess you have to think you're guilty.
What you're looking at is a version of the drug war. This is Ann Wilber's drug war. Ann Wilber's drug war is that she started and she was way more screwed than she was because the Court of Appeal hadn't yet been overturned on whether or not she could have a Section 8. So anyway, but it is what it is. So we're fighting.
Remember, this is a real war with real guns and soldiers and real strategies and real funding. And in order to make war, you have to have an enemy. So Ann Wilber is the enemy. She's got the stuff. She's got the marijuana. That's their key to being able to have a budget and to keep maintaining this war.
I knew that I wasn't breaking the law. I know that I wasn't breaking the law. It'll be okay. I really have faith in that.
And so I'm confident that she's never going to be convicted in one shape or form based on this. And what I'd hope that to happen is that this judge just sees the problems in the prosecution's case and just dismisses it. But if that doesn't happen, then I'm confident if we get to a jury that they're just going to say this is one big clusterfuck and let's not guilty of this. Because, we voted for this and we voted to prevent the situation we're in. We voted to legalize marijuana for medical purposes. And this is a voter-initiated act. And here we are on July 12, 2012, almost 4 years after that vote, and they're prosecuting patients. So I hope the judge and I hope the next judge, if we have another judge in circuit court, will see that for what it is.
People are ending up with criminal records who really had no criminal intent. And we need to determine whether we really want our criminal laws to be serious and whether they're supposed to make sense.
Patient stands there before a very long hopscotch game on the sidewalk, and you don't know where landmines are beneath any of the pieces. So as you're hop, 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 that's one person. The next person says, I know where that one is, and then so you don't know, and but you're trying to comply. I think isn't that what we really want? I mean, don't we want people who are making an effort to comply? So if people don't have criminal intent, in my mind, they shouldn't be prosecuted as though they were criminals.
I would like to be legal and not get busted for just doing an extremely normal thing and an extremely helpful thing. And I didn't want to go sneaking around or whatnot, but as it's turned out, the law is kind of a joke anyway, and I still sneak around. But at least I've got the card. It really helps me calm my fears as far as getting busted or something. But I know it's only a half law. It's half legal and half not, and so if they want to bust you, they can bust you. If they don't want to bust you, they won't bust you.
I think it's just a sad thing. People are trying to follow the law. People voted the law in, and now they're still getting in trouble. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all.
Is it a human right to be able to smoke marijuana? I would say no. It is a human right to be free of the violations that occur to you, the physical, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual violations and terrorism that people are experiencing because of the war on marijuana.
I think it's a human right to control your own body. generally. As long as you're not harmful to others, what right does anyone have to say about how I treat my own body? We really need to live in a healthier world. I don't think we ought to encourage people to do things that are destructive. But the way out of this desert is through education and knowledge, not through prohibition and criminality.
Really challenging to me to be able to wrap my mind around the reality of this war and the reality of the damage that it does to families. It destroys families way more than drugs do, I think.
This law enforcement encounter has cost my family. I'm getting a divorce now. That to me is a huge loss. I mean, we're gonna have to move out of our home and have separate homes and visitations, and it's cost us tens of thousands of dollars. Just the time that I've spent worrying about and thinking about all the things and planning my defense, it's been a real drain on the family. I face one of the gentlemen that worked on the STING team every morning at school. He has a kindergartner, I have a kindergartner. We both drop our kids off at school on a daily basis. So every day I have to hold my head up high and walk through and see the STING officer and still feel that I'm a good part of the community and a good parent.
That was when I understood the power that the drug war holds over people and communities and neighbors, and how it turns people against each other and demonizes them. I would just say to people, rethink what you think the problem really is. We have drug policy problems. We passed drug policy reform here in 2008, and the more they chip away at protections so they can arrest and incarcerate people and take their property, the less safe we all are in society.
Prohibition cannot be enforced for the simple reason that the majority of American people do not want it enforced and are resisting its enforcement. That being so, the orderly thing to do under our form of government is to abolish a law which cannot be enforced, a law which the people of the country do not want enforced.
Prohibition's not an effective law enforcement policy. You're attempting to control social mores by criminal laws. It's like hitting in a finishing nail with a sledgehammer, really. It's counterproductive and it does a lot of damage.
You know, you hear about a drive-by shooting, gang activity, and you think that's a drug problem. No, that's a drug policy problem. Because you don't see the Schlitz guy and the Budweiser guy having shootouts anymore. Not since we re-legalized alcohol.
Prohibition, not only does it hurt people so much, but it's a huge waste of resources. Drug crimes are solved at 60 or 70%, whereas serious violent crimes, rape, robbery, and murder are solved way under 50%. Really, you're talking around 30% for those crimes. Why don't we put the resources into solving violent crime?
We've got, on a macro scale, we have a call for at least rethinking our policy and starting to do something about the loss of, resources. Our prisons are exploding. We incarcerate more people per capita than any other country more than China. We incarcerate more people of color per capita than at the heart of apartheid. And we're very good at it. We're very good at imprisoning people in the U.S., but we don't have a single drug-free prison. So anybody who thinks that we can have a drug-free society needs to get a reality check, because we've got high security and as much policing as is humanly possible in all the prisons, and there's still drugs all through them. And our schools. We can't keep them out of the schools or prisons. Drugs are part of society. Look at the pharmaceuticals that folks take. tons of them. Alcohol, it's just the ones that are deemed illegal and completely prohibited that they go after.
We need to look at prohibition as in the realm of a public health issue, that unfortunately we're treating marijuana as a criminal justice issue, and all drugs. Really, drug prohibition is not successful, not just of marijuana, but of all drugs, and that we need to look to a more sane public policy that's directed toward prevention and treatment.
We have people from all spectrum of humanity that are really calling for an end to this failed public policy. The war on drugs has met none of its intended goals, zero. It hasn't decreased the flow of drugs into society. It hasn't kept it out of the hands of our children. And it hasn't created a safer society in any way. And it hasn't decreased drug use. What's changing is that we're being allowed to have the discussion, because they prevented that for a long time. And when we're allowed to have this discussion, we win.
With the advent of information exchange technology through the internet mostly, and other high-tech forms of communication, people have a lot more knowledge now about what's going on. People have a lot more ability to assemble and petition the government on a moment's notice, if you will. And we're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore.
All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
Happy Hash Bash Day.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. It ain't fair, John Sinclair, in the step on.
Hash Bash started 41 years ago when John Sinclair sold 2 joints to an undercover narcotics agent, and they sent him to jail for 10 years for 2 joints. People got together and threw this huge party. John Lennon came, all these very famous musicians came, and they let John Sinclair out of jail. It was an amazing thing.
I'm John Sinclair. I was at the first Hash Bash in 1972, and I'm here today in 2012.
Hey everybody, happy Hash Bash.
It's basically an annual celebration of smoking weed by citizens in Ann Arbor. That's the long and short of it.
And now, 41 years later, there's some real action taking place. There are some real initiatives. We've already have medical marijuana across the entire state. And so the meaning of all these people coming together and the results of the action of these people and what it could lead to is just a lot more exciting than it has been in recent years. And so this is a kind of a rebirth, and it really, really means something now. It's a celebratory weekend as much as it is getting some business done.
Sign our petition to legalize marijuana. We gotta get this on the ballot. We need your signatures to make it happen. We want our law enforcement officers to spend their time on actual crimes and stop spending our tax dollars on petty offenses, petty marijuana offenses. I have 11 grandchildren, and I don't want them to go through what my children went through with this drug war. It's uncalled for, it's unjust, and the penalty does not fit the crime. I'm doing this for the kids.
We've continued the tradition of rallying against the unfair and unjust marijuana laws.
We are fighting hard this year. We have our statewide campaign and 5 local campaigns. These local campaigns will test our outrageous Attorney General. 3 different types of ballot initiatives will be attempted.
People are working together. We're lucky that we're under attack from our Attorney General, because what had started to be a very splintered group is now unified and working together in ways that I haven't seen before. Folks that you would never find in a room together, standing, sharing the stage.
We will not agree on everything, but let's always remember that that which unites us is much greater than that which divides us. We may support different strategies, but we all suffer under the same laws. We are arrested by the same cops and thrown in the same jails. We may promote medical cannabis or recreational cannabis or adult use cannabis, but we all love the same plant. We all share the same destiny, and so we must support each other's efforts.
It's obvious that we all needed to get together, and no matter what type of inter-community squabbling or disagreements in philosophy or strategies we have to put that aside and work together on these issues that we all agree on.
Nobody thinks about marijuana as much as we do. It's a very niche thing. But there are people who just don't care about it and don't use it, who see that the state officials in Michigan have completely refused to implement the will of the voters. And so these people care about democracy, and they care about very basic human rights.
Why is this such a big deal? I mean, the presidents have smoked marijuana. I think I might be the only person probably in the room not to have used it. So here's the thing, if I can see the wisdom of it and I don't use it, then heck, just let people do what they want to do. I'm not saying like peace, love, and get high, but look, if people want to use it and that's what makes them happy and it gives them relief from the rigors of life, then God bless them. Go do what you want to do.
Total legalization of marijuana would definitely help a business like ours, which is in the growing and the gardening part of it, because more people would be,
gardening if they didn't have to worry about the adverse effects of the law.
You go to the store and buy a six-pack, you should be able to go somewhere and buy a pot. It's the same thing.
If it was legal, none of this would be going on, and we wouldn't be paying for all of these non-violent criminals per se. They call them criminals. Realistically, they were put in jail for growing a plant.
It has been a challenging year, and the current situation can appear bleak. But I'm here to tell you that now is not the time to lose heart or to lose hope. Regardless of the uneven pace of social change, regardless of the resistance of the prosecutor class, we are on the road to victory. We made our decision, and we'll stick with it. We've stepped out of the shadows and into the light. We're never going back. We're never going back to that place of oppression and darkness and shadows again. We've stepped out of the shadows and into the light, and that's where we're going to stay.
If you want to make something to smoke illegal, make tobacco illegal. That shit will kill you.